a lot of couples don't come to couples therapy until they're at the brink, until they're about ready to break up. And then, they're coming in the door and the relationship is over. They just need the formality behind it, a final place to end things. And for themselves to say, we've tried everything. We even tried couples therapy and that didn't work.
Welcome to the Just Live podcast. I'm your host, Olivia Stevens, and I'm inviting you in on my personal journey of learning and discovering how to live a life with more connection, joy, and purpose. I'll be sitting down with people from all walks of life to dive into topics including trauma, mental health, mindfulness, the nuances of love and relationships, and much more. I hope these conversations empower you to expand on what serves you, release what doesn't, and just live. Welcome back to another episode of the Just Live podcast. I am your host, Olivia Stevens, and in today's episode, I sit down with sex and relationship therapist Joanne Bagshaw. Joanne has over 2 decades of experience as a therapist. She is an award-winning professor of psychology and women's studies at Montgomery College, and she's also an author of the book, The Feminist Handbook, Practical Tools to Resist Sexism and Dismantle the Patriarchy. I really enjoyed this conversation with Joanne. I wish I had so much more time with her. There were so many aha moments. We dived into topics such as infidelity, desire discrepancy, how trauma can show up in your relationship. I even unpacked some things I had gone through in the past in my relationships, and I really appreciate all the expertise and insight that she brings to this conversation. I think that this conversation will definitely have some people kind of evaluating, how they've shown up in the past in relationships or how they're currently showing up. At the very least, I hope that this conversation can help reduce the stigma that still seems to very much surround the idea of couples therapy, and I hope that it can encourage those that are in relationship to explore it. So thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Feel free to share, like, comment. All the support is very much appreciated. So as always, thank you so much and enjoy. Bye. Thank you for allowing me to be here today and taking time out of your day to sit down and talk with me. I have a lot of questions for you in regards to relationships and sex. Can you tell me a little bit about how you got into the industry?
Sure. Well, it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for asking. I've been a therapist for 25 years, and in the beginning of my career, I focused primarily on working with trauma survivors, mainly rape and sexual assault survivors, intimate partner violence survivors, adults who are abused as children. And then over the course of my career, I did realize that my training in sex therapy was inadequate, as it is for most therapists, because we don't receive training in human sexuality. Mm-hmm. So about 5-ish years ago, I decided to respecialize as a sex therapist.
Okay. How did you get into it, initially?
Most of my clients are talking about sex. Okay. So, and without a solid foundation in human sexuality, it was hard for me to support them in the ways that they needed. So I was really looking for a way to refocus my clinical practice. As you can imagine, being a therapist for a long span of time, our interests change, our niches change. And so I was also looking to sort of respecialize. It helps. I'm sure this is true of many careers, but certainly with therapists, it does help us, prevent burnout and stay fresh and learn new things and stay on top of the research, what's current in our field, and learn new skills and just be better therapists.
Okay, I understand. So you started as a therapist focusing more on trauma survivors?
Correct.
And then you realized, as you're going throughout your career, you didn't have kind of the education or the foundation in sexuality to support the care and the, guidance that you were giving?
In terms of talking about sex.
Okay.
And which is interesting because in most psychotherapy training programs, we don't learn human sexuality. So it wasn't just as if, me, Joanne Bagshaw, didn't have enough training. Okay. It was like all of us, right? Wow. It's really, it's quite shameful, I think, in the field, because we're missing a whole aspect of someone's life.
Right.
And so, I was searching for that. And certainly now that I'm certified as a sex therapist, looking, back through my career, I might have worked with people differently on specific topics, right? So I wish I had that training earlier, but I have it now. And I do hope that the field catches on. I do think that there are more and more people, certainly in our area, the UV area, there are more sex therapists, but I hope that industry-wide, that our graduate training programs begin to focus on human sexuality.
Okay. So I met you back in 2019. I had actually reached out to you for your professional help. I was in a relationship at the time. We'd been together about 3 years, and we definitely were hitting some roadblocks. I'd say like communication was off. Our intimacy was off when we were having challenges in that aspect of our relationship. And I reached out to you in hopes of getting like some professional help to kind of help guide us to reconnect and understand how to communicate better. Unfortunately, the person I was seeing at the time wasn't open to getting some outside perspective and some professional help. I feel like I've noticed a trend in a positive direction that people are more open to therapy. There's not as much of a stigma around it, but it still seems like there is a large stigma and a lot of pushback against couples therapy.
Agreed. Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that is?
I think there's a couple of reasons. First of all, we have sort of this cultural narrative that if you meet your special person, then things are easy.
Yeah.
And you don't have to work on your relationship. And if it's the right person in the right relationship, it'll be, a beautiful romance for the rest of your life. And that is, quite frankly, bullshit.
Yeah.
So all relationships require work and effort. And so I think that that's part of it. And then there's another part, which I think is really interesting, in that a lot of couples don't come to couples therapy until they're at the brink, until they're about ready to break up. And then, they're coming in the door and the relationship is over. They just need the formality behind it, a final place to end things. And for themselves to say, we've tried everything. We even tried couples therapy and that didn't work. And so I think that those two things, when you put them together, make a big shift in people's understanding about couples therapy. They say it doesn't work because they can name 5 people that went to couples therapy and it didn't work for.
Right.
But those are people that came at the end of the relationship when it was already over.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. For me, I mean, I've engaged in therapy a lot of my life, so it feels like a normal practice and something that is helpful to me throughout my growth and, evolving into adulthood and beyond, well into it. But so I'm always confused when people give pushback or feel like it's not for them. I feel like it's been such an instrumental part of my growth.
Mm-hmm.
And for instance, if an athlete wants to get better at their sport, they would hire a coach to, help them improve performance and to give them tips, to sharpen their skills.
Yeah.
I just don't understand why people wouldn't want to seek the help of a professional that can give outside perspective and really, point out some things they may not realize because they're so in the thick of it.
Yeah, I think there's probably some nuance in there. I understand the trends since COVID and now. So certainly during the pandemic, everybody was coming to therapy, right? So I went from a solo practice to a group practice just because of my wait list.
Wow.
And now what the research is telling us, and there's, I can't remember the authors, but just a recent New York Times article, that that trend for therapy is continuing, right? So people are still seeking psychotherapy at a higher rate than they maybe were before COVID, now kind of focus on anxiety and depression, and how that shows up in different areas of their life. However, I do still think that there's a subgroup of population of people who are still highly resistant to therapy. And that group might be heterosexual men who are more likely to come to therapy if it's a couples therapy, and particularly if it's sex therapy. Yeah. They're actually more likely to find the sex therapist and
Interesting.
make the scheduling appointments.
Yeah.
Right? Then there are other people who may have a really complicated, deep trauma history that it's terrifying to come. It's scary. It's hard.
Yeah.
And then there are cultural groups like African Americans who might be highly resistant to coming because a lot of psychotherapies are, really geared towards, white culture, right? So that's where our grand theories came from. So, rightly so, they're hesitant to come in. So I think those are just a couple of examples. And in each little group, there's some nuance. But I do think that things have shifted. I think in general, and an area depends on that. So I am from Long Island, New York, where therapy is not as common. Maybe if it's insurance only, will people be willing to go if they only pay a copay? But it's not like, the DMV area. So I think that the trend is therapy is more common and popular, but there are some subgroups in there who are resistant for their own unique reasons.
Okay. So if that previous significant other had been open to meeting, how would our sessions have started, or how would our work together have started?
Okay. So just speaking generally about how I do couples work. And I have very eclectic training in different kinds of therapy. But I like with couples, I want to know about their histories, the history of the relationship, how they met, what drew them to each other, what they fell in love with, what happened along the way, like when did the trouble start, and what was going on in the environment of the relationship at that time. Culturally, their familial environment, whatever was going on around them. Yeah. And how did they handle those problems? And when I learned that, then I'm going to start to dive a little bit into their childhoods, because, the idea of diving into your childhood in therapy isn't to blame your parents, but it's to identify and understand patterns. Okay. We all have our touch points, our own particular wounds, the way that we see and interpret things when they go hard, right? Or they go wrong or they're hard. So one person might experience something as a rejection, another as an abandonment. That comes from your childhood. And so helping to, piece those together. So I want to understand, like, why are you guys here? Yeah. Why are you coming now? What are the patterns at play? And that's my strength as a couples therapist, is pointing out those patterns and then showing them in real time in the sessions how to change them. So we'll deconstruct a common argument. They don't have to often make up an argument. They're usually in the middle of one. So we don't, argue in couples therapy, but, I'll have them start. And, then I'm interrupting a lot and I'm saying, I'm having them shift gears. Well, what if you did this? Or why are you standing that way? Or what's happening here? How's this impacting you? Let's change this whole dynamic. And then they have to practice. So, and I'm a firm believer in small, sustainable change over time. Each week or 2 weeks that I see them, we try something new that they implement at home, and then they come back and we, rework it.
What are some of the common arguments or challenges that couples are bringing to you?
Well, so it depends on who you're asking. If you ask couples, they say, we have trouble communicating. Everything else is great. Everything is great except we don't have sex that often, right? But I'm looking deeper. So the challenges that I see, the people that are drawn to me, usually have something from childhood left over that they're playing out with each other, and there's some transference going on. So transference is when you are transferring a historical pattern from an earlier relationship onto a current relationship.
Oh, wow.
And it's very, very common. We all have transference with people. Yeah. When teaching about transference to students, I talk about a student that might come in that reminds me of someone that I like very much, and I automatically love the student. But what if it was a student that, reminded me of someone that I didn't like very much, and how that, how that comes to play. So, our awareness as therapists makes a big role. But many times in the couple dynamic, it's like at some point in the session, it's two young children who didn't get certain needs met, and they're fighting for those needs from a young place. And helping to identify that, stop it, help the couple have empathy for each other. Like when you learn where that wound comes from, what that need was that wasn't met. And you can have empathy for your partner and understand why they're reacting that way. Then you change and then you feel closer.
Can you give any specific examples of something that might have happened in childhood and how it shows up in a relationship? Like specifically, I know you said feeling like a need wasn't met or you felt abandoned. What would that have looked like in childhood? And then how does it look in an adult relationship?
Sure. So some common themes that I see that human experiences that people go through. A parent left or died. Another one was working a lot or had other children or children with special needs and were distracted. And that from a child's perspective, they lost a parent. Maybe they lost two parents, but there was no one there when they needed them.
Okay.
Right. And then let's say the other partner had a parent who was very smothering, who was there too much, and maybe controlling and smothering. And you can see then with the one partner where they felt abandoned, might be seeking and approaching the partner who was smothered, like too much, like where are you? Where are you? You didn't call me back. You didn't text me. And then the partner who was smothered, it's like, why can't you just leave me alone?
Yeah.
Like, I'm busy. I told you I was busy, and then, but really it is two young people where, the person who was abandoned is like, I need you. I feel alone. I feel like a young child again. What's happening to me? And then the other person is like, why is everyone on me? Like stop controlling me. And they're both really arguing with parents.
So then how do you work towards and those sound like opposite ends of the spectrum. So it's like you have to kind of find a way
everybody's got to get in the middle. And the middle is the place of balance for couples is, where do we find a middle ground? So going back to if they can tell those stories to each other about when that abandonment occurred and how it made them feel, what it feels like to be smothered and have your autonomy taken away. If they can each hear that and feel empathy, and understand that the way they're approaching each other is triggering that in the other person. You can't change other people, right? You can only be solely responsible for how you respond in situations. So if you're coming in with, I know that a sensitive part for me, it's in my history is feeling abandoned, that I have to take care of that younger self, so that I can go to my partner from an adult place and say, hey, I know you were busy today, but I sent you a text earlier and just checking in because you didn't respond. Like that's way different than you don't love me, you don't care, why you're paying attention to me. That's an adult place of checking in. And then the other partner, if they can check in with themselves and say, I know that I'm sensitive to having my autonomy taken away and feeling controlled. And so this person is just asking from an adult place, like they're just checking in. That's a normal, valid, healthy adult need. And I can monitor that in myself and then come back to the other and say, I'm sorry. I saw your text. I meant to respond and I got sidetracked. I'm here. I'll be home in an hour, something like that.
Sounds
and it's so easy. It is simple, but it's so hard because of the human experience and all of the complex emotions that come up.
And I guess kind of if you're always building on that pattern or that conditioning, it's going to take a lot to kind of relearn how to act and show up in a different way.
That's exactly right. And then that's what we work on in couples. It's like, okay, so what if you said this instead? And then we role play it. And then how does that land on the partner? And the partner's like, yeah, if you said that, I would have totally been fine. And we also work with body language. There's a lot to just openly asking a question or like, where were you? Or leave me alone, like, how does that impact the other? And how can we change? How can we become, you can feel empowered. You can be angry. You can be upset. But be authentic and owning your own feelings, taking responsibility for your own feelings.
Yeah. You had mentioned a lot of times couples come and it's almost like it's too late. It's like their last resort or they've tried other things and they've kind of, I guess, maybe repressed things for so long or swept things under the rug. how do you maybe promote or encourage couples to come a lot sooner? I feel like there is this stigma that people feel like asking for help means something's like seriously wrong versus why don't we just be proactive and work together? Do you ever have couples that come in very new in the relationship that
Yes.
maybe there isn't any significant challenges, but they just want to understand each other better?
Yeah, it's funny. Again, when we talk about groups, usually lesbian relationships are coming in saying, we just want to make our relationship really, really great.
How nice.
Heterosexual couples don't do that as often. Yeah. And that's unfortunate because, I think there's so many myths around what relationships are supposed to look like that is steeped in heteronormativity that straight couples can't like get out of that, and even about how to, what sex is, like sex is only penetrative intercourse, like not really, right?
Yeah.
So, I think there's a lot that we can learn. It's the couples can, but in terms of reaching them, I think really, podcasts like this, education, I think probably our schools and chapters need to do some education campaigns for couples that you can really save your relationship if you start in the beginning. I want to add this though, sometimes when a relationship doesn't work out, that's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. So I don't want people to think that a relationship that doesn't work out means that it failed.
Yeah.
Because we are impacted by the people that we're in relationship with. We grow and change in every one of those experiences, and someone else is around the corner.
So you said people come in and say, we're not having enough sex. How do you unpack that?
So what does enough sex mean?
Yeah.
It's some of the same questions I asked earlier too, like when did this start? And so for my sex therapy couples who are coming in with desire discrepancy, I sort of have a spiel that I do at the beginning because some psychoeducation really helps a lot in understanding the arc of relationships and arousal and desire over time. So in the beginning, there's usually a lot of chemistry and sex seems easy and it seems spontaneous, seems unplanned. I argue that it's not spontaneous. Someone is on or has gotten birth control. Both parties are grooming or buying outfits, right? There's preparation, but no one is actually saying that out loud.
Yeah.
We're pretending it's spontaneous. So, but the chemicals are real. And those chemicals and that chemistry usually last 2-ish years. And then you're moving into a different kind of relationship. And now is the time that you actually have to start really talking about and planning and thinking about maintaining your sex life. But we don't know that in society because our movies and books tell us it should just be easy.
Yeah.
And your partner's going to throw you on the dining room table and have sex with you.
And the partner's going to want to be thrown on the dining room table.
Right. There's no factors for bad backs or injuries, kids and work and all of that.
Right.
So, so at that point, you do need to shift gears. And so, that is important to tell people. And like a lot of couples that'll land for them. Okay, that's happened for us. And then there's different types of desire. So we're taught that desire goes in a linear pattern that's based on what's true for most men, which is that you feel desire, then arousal, then climax, and then there's a resolution phase where you rest and then start the process all over again, depending on how old you are, is how long that resting phase is. So it's not very long, and 18-year-olds, but longer and older men. But that's not the way it is for most women. So for most women don't feel desire for sex until they feel aroused.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so if there's anything I wish everyone knew, it would be this information right here. So, so this is why couples will come in and often stereotypically, it's the husband or male partner will say, she just never initiates. And she's like, I don't think about it. I'm not even, I'm not thinking about it. Yes, it does. So, but then I'll ask, okay, but once you say okay to sex and you start giving it a go, are you into it then? And then she's like, yeah, actually. And I'm like, well, that's because now you feel desire because now you're aroused. And so there's nothing wrong with her. So this, and often with just straight couples, they're coming in with, she has low desire. There's something wrong with her. And she's often identifying as the low desire partner. Maybe she's not. Maybe she doesn't have low desire. She just has different desire.
Okay.
Right. And so that's why one of the hallmarks of sex therapy is this very unsexy sounding sex date, because planning it is so important. When you're beyond that initial 2 years and you've started your lives together and you're working and you have kids, you have to plan sex. Otherwise, it's not happening.
Yeah.
And this idea that we don't plan it is a fallacy, because I already pointed out we didn't have spontaneous sex during dating. We just pretended it was spontaneous.
Yeah.
So here you have to plan it. And then you have to plan at a time that works for both parties. Most couples having sex before bed is not great, especially if you have young children. One or both are falling asleep by the time your head hits the pillow.
Yeah.
So, and you might have to plan for a babysitter. You might have to go to a hotel once every couple of weeks or once a month and just, spend the time there getting out of the house, and then no one can bother you. But plan the date. And then your time in between the date is foreplay. So foreplay is sexy text. It's commenting on each other. It's, saying, I'm looking forward to Thursday, or whatever it is that is true for the couple. And then, and that's building up her arousal so that by the time you're there, she feels desire. Right. And then it's, this mutual foreplay that's occurring over time.
Interesting. Yeah. So back to kind of the desire discrepancy that you mentioned. Can you elaborate on that? I know that you said the desire doesn't come until the female's aroused, but is there still...
Generally.
Yeah. Are men still desiring it more than women? Or is it vice versa, or a little of both? Or is it that not that women aren't desiring it, they're just not desiring the sex that they're getting?
Yes, I think it's all of those things, actually. Great job. That's why it's complicated. And so, first of all, desire discrepancy is normal. It's typical.
Yeah. Most
people don't have the same level of desire for sex, most couples, at the same time, always. So, it does take that understanding. And then if you can throw in the differences in desire and arousal patterns, and then think about, I also want to ask a heterosexual couple, is she having an orgasm? Because if she's not, what's motivating her to have sex?
Right.
And why isn't she?
Yeah.
So, those are things to talk about. And so it might be the sex that she's getting. Maybe if it is very penetration focused and not a lot of foreplay, then she doesn't even have time to get aroused. And so, then some psychoed goes in there, and that's hard for both men and women to hear, particularly men. A lot of couples come in, adult couples, who are like, yeah, we know all about sex and don't know any of the things I just said, and don't really want to admit it. And that's okay. They don't have to. That's why I tell everybody.
Yeah.
So they don't have to admit it. And then they have this information. So it might be just information. It might be the way that they're having sex. And then you throw in other human factors. Does one or both have trauma? How is that impacting? What is their stress levels like? What's their schedule like? What are the other variables that are coming into play? And then the idea is to find some kind of compromise.
Yeah. It's a lot of factors.
It's a lot of factors. Yeah. And that's the first few sessions is really doing some investigative work, asking good questions and helping them piece these things together.
Yeah.
From a perspective that's non-blaming. It's not usually one party's fault. It's a relationship dynamic.
I know I remember you said it felt like a lot of women that come in feel like something's wrong with them, something's wrong with their desire. I know I felt that way in the relationship that I was in when I was seeking your help. I felt like, what's wrong with me? I'm 25, 26 years old and I don't want to have sex with my partner, but all of these things make so much sense. So,
it all adds up.
It does.
Yeah.
It does add up. So,
and it's also, the cultural narratives, this understanding that women don't want sex as much as men do, which is completely false. And men are not robots. And that's the other thing that comes into play with sex therapy, especially if he's not initiating sex, if he's having erectile dysfunction, and she might take it personally.
Yeah.
This idea like in a patriarchal system that men are ready for sex with anyone at any time, no matter what. Right? That is not true. And that women don't want sex and have to be sort of cajoled into it. Right. And that's not true.
Right.
So I like to get that stuff out of the way and let's sit with the two individuals that are actually in the room and what's really going on.
So shifting gears, I'm sure you have some couples come in that have dealt with infidelity, maybe?
Absolutely. And like desire discrepancy, it's complicated. There's no one explanation for why someone was unfaithful or why this happened, in the relationship.
Yeah.
So again, it's really, therapists are taking a good history and understanding, what's the arc of this relationship? When did things go awry? What was going on in the person? What did the affair fulfill? And it's not necessarily about sex.
Right.
It's not always about the partner. It could be them wanting to remind themselves that they're attractive, feeling that and that rush, that initial rush of chemicals in the beginning of a relationship. It could be repeating generational patterns. When you look at someone who's been unfaithful, was their father or mother unfaithful? Their grandparents? Oftentimes, it is something that happens throughout a family line. And that's actually really something interesting to look at. Is something has been learned, something from previous generations is being worked through in an unconscious way, right? So that has to come to light. And you also do want to work with what's not going right in the relationship. And that doesn't mean blaming the betrayed partner, but that doesn't mean that person, did everything great in the relationship either. So you want to look at all of these things to figure out.
It's a lot of nuance.
It's a lot of nuance.
Yeah. How do you help couples that have chosen to decide to continue to move forward? How do you kind of help them through the aftermath? Like, what advice do you give? What sort of things you have them work on?
Sure. And I actually think it's really important that couples know that you can heal from an affair. You don't have to, but you can if you choose to. And I think that there's a lot of also cultural messages about working through an affair. Like the person who stays is often judged pretty harshly, which is unfortunate. But it depends, obviously it depends a lot on the relationship and where you are, and in that consideration as to whether you're going to stay and what else is going on.
Yeah.
But in terms of how to work it through, the person, the betrayer, has to really, really repair. And that means they have to take 100% full responsibility for the pain they caused their partner in an authentic and deep way. They have to feel the hurt and express it, the hurt that they caused to someone else. This can take a couple of sessions. It can take years.
Yeah.
It really depends. Often it depends on their background, but they can be burdened with so much shame that's coming up from other previous trauma, and that gets in the way, and they can't get there yet. But until they're really able to own and deeply apologize, and I don't mean just saying, I'm sorry. That's not an apology. And I'm not a big one on apologies. I mean really, really repair. I did this because X, Y, and Z. I know that's why I did it. And I feel so, so horrible that I hurt you this deeply. I will never do this again. I'm going to do whatever I need to do to make sure that this never happens again. And the betrayed person needs to hear it and it needs to be authentic.
Yeah. How do you guide the betrayed person from being able to accept that and heal and not hang it over their head? Like where do you
that's a
find
balance
that
too,
balance?
because ongoing trust issues,
Yeah.
right? And so when I'm working with someone around trust, I'm not teaching people to trust other people. Trust means trusting yourself and your intuition. And so usually most people had an intuition and ignored it. And so they need to learn to really focus on that intuition. On all kinds of levels in relationships, we hurt each other. We say things, we do things that are selfish. We, make snarky remarks. So there's always like some kind of, a continuum of harm that goes on in relationships. And, you have to know, like trusting your intuition in terms of like, where is this coming from? Can we heal from this? Can I forgive this person? Which never means saying it's okay that you did what you did.
Yeah.
But with infidelity, and we're talking about trust for the betrayed person, it really means them zeroing in on trusting their intuition.
I like that you put it that way. Do you think there's any early warning signs of somebody that may be unfaithful in a relationship, or any I don't like the term red flag.
Yeah.
Like it's used so much, but are there things or behaviors that somebody, if you are getting this feeling, are there other things that might confirm it?
The early sign is your intuition, and it's telling you something's not adding up. The amount of time that they said they were gone and where they said they went didn't add up, and it's repeating. The way that they are constantly turning their phone over or off, or hiding it from me, or talking outside on the phone, something's not right. There's so many different ways that people can have an affair that, I couldn't say it's these signs. It's not like a BuzzFeed article, the 5 signs of
right. Well, it probably is. But,
maybe I'm sure there is. I might be quoted in one, but in reality, it's not that simple, because there are so many different ways that it could show up, and what infidelity actually means. Right, varies amongst couples and even individuals in the couple.
Yeah, I know. There could be an affair, or it could be a one-time instance. Or I know some people, I've heard the terms emotional cheating versus physical cheating. Are those things that are discussed in, your sessions with couples as far as
for sure
emotional? I don't know. That to me, what comes to mind is maybe someone having some sort of relationship with a coworker, or, texting, but nothing physical ever happens, things like that. Do you think, in your opinion, is the impact similar? Is it different, physical versus emotional?
That depends on the person and their understanding for themselves of what infidelity is, their definition and their history. Because sometimes people have a strong reaction to something that myself or someone else might think, okay, that was bad, but not really bad. I've heard worse. But that to me is a sign that there's something in their history going on, right? And it's not that they're overreacting. It's that their reaction isn't just about this affair, right? It's something else. So I think what's important with couples is having them come to an understanding of what infidelity is.
That's my next question.
So because non-monogamy, it's consensual non-monogamy is not infidelity, as long as both parties are completely on board and not coerced in any way. So really, they have to come up with a definition. It's not my definition. It's theirs.
I'm glad you brought that up. Can you go into that a little bit further? Consensual non-monogamy.
So
I feel like I trip on it when I say
exactly. So I mean, monogamy is not for everyone. Non-monogamy is not for everyone, but there's all kinds of ways that people can have relationships. And, I like to encourage my clients to create the lives that they feel good about living. You don't have to follow society's rules if they're not for you. And so if you want to open up your relationship, that's great. We can help you do that, but everything has to be on the table. And this thing about non-consensual, consensual non-monogamy, now I'm tripping, is that couples really work through and often write up contracts about what is allowed and what isn't. So, cheating on your partner and saying, well, this is being non-monogamous is not, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about actual in-depth conversations about what's okay and what's not okay. And, the couples that do really well with that, I don't see them. They're not coming to me. I'm seeing the couples who are struggling, usually because one is not on board and feels like they have to. And the relationship is not in a good place. If your relationship is not in a good place, opening it up to a third party or a fourth party is not going to resolve your issues.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So my job, let's get you into a good place. And then if you want to open your marriage, we can figure out how to do that.
Yeah, it's just such an interesting concept to me because I know in my brain, I'm fighting against a lot of, societal conditioning and this is what a relationship looks like. And if somebody, goes outside those lines, they don't love you or they're unfaithful. And I'm, learning more about it and learning to kind of expand, my thoughts. And I'm sure a lot of couples struggle with that, with kind of, understanding the concept, but then there still being kind of like a roadblock, with how they see it and view it.
Exactly. And so that, these are really deep, hard conversations that couples, need some support around having.
Yeah. We had mentioned a little bit that past trauma would be a factor in some challenges, and within a relationship, within the intimacy within a relationship. Can you go into that a little bit deeper? Maybe some specific examples of what might show up and how it might affect a relationship?
So there's all kinds of different ways that someone can have past trauma, but I'm thinking about couples where one or both are highly reactive, and they're highly reactive to each other. And any sense of dysregulation, like their nervous system goes on high alert. And I want to say highly reactive, not overreactive. I feel like that's kind of a judgment and a criticism. It's more, like their nervous system is always, on guard. And then if they feel some separation, if they feel criticized, so they're triggered in some way. And triggered is a word that's overused, like some of the other words, we were talking about. But it does have a real meaning for people with PTSD, and that something has happened that is triggering some traumatic memories, whether conscious or unconscious. And so they're being highly reactive. They're interpreting relationship challenges through a traumatic lens. And a traumatic lens is seeing things only by the catastrophic results that are likely to happen in your traumatized mind. That's the only thing that's going to happen is something catastrophic. Or they're seeing things through, this lens of people are trying to hurt me. You're trying to, to do things to me that make me feel bad, when that may not be true. Or maybe it is true, but they're so traumatized that they can't react in a healthy way to it. They're so dysregulated. But often with couples, they're both dysregulated. And they come in and they're kind of bouncing off the walls. And these are sometimes we call them high conflict couples. The fights are ugly. They're old, traumatic, unhealed, raw wounds showing up in real time, and they don't know how to stop it.
Yeah. That's awful.
It's hard. It's painful.
Yeah.
And those couples, they often need individual therapy as well.
How often do you suggest that?
That couples see individual. So in couples therapy, we're working with the couple. So my client is the couple, and we're working to change patterns. So if somebody, one or both partners, has stuff from their own history that is impacting our ability to change those patterns, then I suggest individual.
Yeah.
And it's not always easy to hear. Sometimes, the couple who is referred to individual feels blamed. And it's not really about them being at fault for what's happening in the relationship. It's just, this will help you in doing the work that we're doing here.
Yeah.
And so sometimes they need to also just sort of like, let's take a break and you both get some individual therapy and then we'll come back. It's all individualized, honestly,
right.
Based on what they're coming in with.
If there's couples that come in and they're working together, at what point or how is kind of a decision made if they decide, you know what, I think that we're going to have to end things or go our separate ways? How do you guide couples once they've kind of decided that's a route that they're choosing?
Yeah, and it happens. That's a part of them coming in. It's like we as couples therapists aren't in charge of what they do. Like their process may be what's best for them is to separate or break up. And having a safe space to do that and have these conversations with a third party present, that our presence often in these conversations makes each partner sort of on their best behavior, saying things in the right way, hearing things in the right way. But sometimes we pick up that's the direction that they're going in. I myself might, see them individually for a session and just check in like, hey, so, what's going on? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
If I feel like they can't say it with the partner, but I might check in with the partner and say something like, I'm sensing your ambivalence about the relationship, about staying in the relationship, but I could be wrong. So I'd like to hear from you. Like, how do you feel about staying? Like, give them permission to talk about the stuff. They actually need that guidance.
Yeah, I feel like it probably feels really hard for a number of reasons. I mean, how much time you've invested in the relationship, whether or not there's children. I mean, you do love this person.
Yeah.
It's probably hard to admit.
It's absolutely hard to admit. They don't, they may not want to stay together, but they don't want to end things. And that is really hard. And that transition of ending, and especially if they're married and own property and have children and businesses, it's so hard and it's so complicated. And I understand that. And so that's what makes them come in, right? And it hasn't happened a lot. I mean, in all my years, maybe 5 times or something.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yes, not a lot. Often they'll stop coming. And
rather than know what happened.
I don't know what happened. So,
oh gosh,
yeah. So I don't know.
What are some traits or characteristics of couples that seem to be working and well together and are, I don't like to use the word happy, but are connected,
happy is good,
fulfilled? What are some traits or things that they do?
The first thing they do is they make their relationship a priority.
Oh my gosh, that's a good answer.
Yeah. The relationship is the most important thing. And this is particularly hard for parents to understand and make their kids the most important thing. But you don't have a family if you don't make your relationship the most important thing. You're 2 separate families. So you have to prioritize the relationship. That's number 1.
I love that answer.
Yeah. And then other things are having empathy for each other, being sensitive to each other. I don't mean walking in eggshells. That's a completely different thing. But, if you know that X, Y, and Z really upsets your partner, maybe try to avoid that or talk it through. And the other really important thing is a sense of humor. I can't tell you how many fights could be diminished if someone would just crack a appropriate joke.
Yeah.
And just de-escalate. You're living with this person. You have to learn to de-escalate. And by cracking a joke, I don't mean bypassing with humor or making fun of someone. I mean, it's appropriate. It's like, this is kind of funny. We need to laugh at this.
Yeah. That's important.
Yeah.
Having fun.
You have to have fun.
Yeah.
Like, when's the last time you guys had fun together? Go do something fun. Just go have fun. It's so important. So putting the relationship first, having empathy for each other, validating each other's feelings, and having fun.
I think that's a great note to end on. Have fun, everybody.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
I've learned a lot. I want to come back for more.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.